Shalom Mashpaka, greetings to you in the name of Yahusha Elohim to the 12 tribes who are scattered overseas. This afternoon I want to speak about a topic that I looked up on the 13 maschiyls. Alright, so there are actually 13 psalms which have the word maschiyl, which is Strong's H4905. This is the word in Hebrew. Right, Hebrew reads from the right to the left, and this word is from the hifil stem, verb stem. All right, so in Hebrew grammar, the hifil verb stem is generally used to express the causative action in an active voice in Hebrew. In many cases, the noun is derived from the same root and is the object or result of the hifil verb associated with that root. So, for example, the hifil verb ha matir, all right, means to cause to rain down, and the noun matar means rain. All right, so hence, if maschil is a hifil verb stem, which is a causative, verb, let's first see the root word, which is Strong's H7919, which is sakal, which means understand, skill, teach, or instruct. All right, so hence the hipil verb stem for sakal means causing and understanding. All right, so like when it says, he who has ears, let him hear. Will everybody hear? No. But the call is to a causative understanding. All right, the intention is to hear the actual meaning of the ruach in the letter. So that is called the hipil, verb stem, a causative understanding. So hifil usually expresses the causative action of kal. Now, what is kal? Kal is a verb stem in Hebrew grammar. All right, it's the simplest form in Hebrew, in biblical Hebrew. So the kal stem is generally used to express either simple action or stative action. So all other stem formations are derived from the kal form. It is by far the most common form of a verb. All right, I'll give you an example. Like the verb is he ate, all right, and the hifil verb stem would be he caused to eat. All right, so you see the difference here. He ate is a simple verb, all right, which is a kal form in Hebrew, and he caused to eat is a hifil stem, verb stem. All right, that's what it called. That's what they call. Another example would be he killed, all right, or he murdered, and the hifil stem would be he caused to murder or he caused to kill. So it's a causative verb, all right, for a person to understand that who is the one behind that killing, the act of killing. Okay, that's what it means. So also, like, to hear, all right, that's a verb, right? So to give ear to would be a causative understanding. He who has ears, let him hear. So another example would be far, all right, the word far would be to remove oneself. So hifil stem would be to remove oneself or far away. Okay, so which shows a causative verb. Okay, showing that who is removing himself and going far away. So that's what it means. So hence the causative verb sakal, translated as understand, skilled, teach in maschiyl, is caused to understand. So it's a causative verb causing to understand. Okay, so when it says a psalm of David maschiyl, for example in Psalms 32, it's causative to hear and understand what David in the ruach is going to say. Okay, so it's like a preface saying that a maschiyl of David, like it's which means that, okay, pay close attention, see what David is saying and who is it pointing out to. So that's what maschiyl means. Psalms 42 says to the chief musician maschiyl for the sons of Korah, and Psalms 44 says to the chief musician for the sons of Korah maschiyl. So the sons of Korah are writing a song to themselves, all right, and what are they writing? They are writing what they heard from their fathers. Okay, when we read Psalms 44 verses 1, it says, "We have heard with our ears, our fathers have related to us the work you did in their days, in the days of old." Okay, so we know who the father of the sons of Korah was, right? Korah. Right? They were the descendants of Korah. And we know the rebellion of Korah, how he wanted to be in the priestly lineage of Aaron, and this was the cause of rebellion because he wanted to be in that priestly lineage of Aaron and his sons. So I'll give you the two reasons why Korah rebelled against Yahuwah's order, all right, of the priesthood. So the first reason is when we see Moses makes Kohath's youngest grandson as leader of the father's house of the clans of Kohathites. So if you read Exodus chapter 6 verses 18, "And the sons of Kohath, Amram and Itchar and Hebron and Uzel." So if you see here, Uzel is the youngest son of Kohath. All right, and Korah was the son of Itchar, who was the second son. And Moses and Aaron were sons of Amram. All right, the priesthood lineage came from Amram. So the next in line was Itchar, but what Moses did was he made Uzel, all right, who was the the son of Kohath. So his grandson, all right, was just okay, Elith Safan, all right, Elith Safan, the grandson of Kohath, all right. Moses made him the leader of the tribes that came from Kohath. So if you read Numbers chapter 3 verses 30, it says, "And the leader of the father's house of the clans of the Kohathites was Elisaphan, son of Uzziel." So this was the first reason why he rebelled, because he was the second son. So if the priesthood went over here to Amram, so obviously being the son of Itchar, he should his thinking was that he should have been made the leader of the clans of his fathers. All right. So, but Uzel was chosen, and Elisaphan we saw was the son of Uzel, whom Moses made as the leader. All right. So let's move on. I covered all this. If you can read Exodus 6:20, where Amram took for himself Jochebed, his father's sister, and she bore him Aaron and Moshe, and the years of the life of Amram were 137. And Amram was the first son of Kohath, from where the priesthood, the Aaronic priesthood came. Okay. And here we see Exodus 6:21, the son of Itchar, all right, Korah. Korah was the son of Itchar. And here we saw Numbers 3:30 that Moses made Elisaphan, son of Uzziel, who was the youngest son of Kohath, as the leader of the father's house of the clans of Kohathites. Okay, this was the first reason. The second reason was Korah disdained the task of carrying the burdens of the items of the tabernacle. Now, to understand this, Levi had three sons, okay, Gershom, Kohath, and Merari. Now, when we read Genesis 46 verses 11, the sons of Levi, Gershom, Kohath, Merari. Okay. Now this Gershom is also spelled as Gershom and Gershon. Okay. So here it's written in Exodus 6, 17 and 18, sorry, till 19. It says the sons of Gershon, Libni and Shimei, according to the families, and the sons of Kohath, Amram, Itchar, Hebron, and Uzziel, and the years of the life of Kohath were 133. Verse 19, and the sons of Merari, Mahali and Mushi, these are the families of Levi according to their generations. Now the major dispute, all right, why Korah rebelled against Moses and Aaron, because if you read Numbers chapter 7 verses 6 to 9, all right, it says that Moses took carts and oxen and gave them to the Levim. Now whom he gave? Verse 7, 2 carts and 4 oxen he gave to the sons of Gershon according to their service, which means whatever tasks that were given to Gershom and his sons, all right, they were put on the carts and they didn't have to carry those heavy burdens of the tabernacle, items of the tabernacle. All right. And when we read So when I'll read out these verses, Numbers 7 verses 6 to 9, it says, so Moses took the carts and oxen and gave them to the Levim. 2 carts and 4 oxen he gave to the sons of Gershon according to their service. Verse 8, and 4 carts and 8 oxen he gave to the sons of Merari according to their service under the direction of Ithamar the son of Aaron the priest. Verse 9, but he did not give any to the sons of Kohath because the service of the set apart objects belonged to them which they carried on the shoulder. Now I told you Kohath had sons Amram, Itchar, Hebron and Uzel. Okay, so uh, these sons, all right, who Korah, all right, and the sons of Hebron, and Uzel was just the leader, right? His son was the leader. So these two sons, all right, their lineage, they were not given carts. Okay, so they had to carry the objects, set apart objects, which belonged to them on the shoulder. So the Gershonites were responsible for the care of the tabernacle and tent, its covering, the curtains at the entrance to the tent of the meeting, the curtains of the courtyard, the curtains of the entrance to the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and altar, and the ropes and everything related to their use. And remember, we read they were given carts to carry these. So you can read that in Numbers chapter 3 verses 25, which tells the responsibilities and the tasks given to the children of Gershon. Alright, similarly the Merarites were appointed to take care of the frames of the tabernacle, its crossbars, posts, bases, all its equipment and everything related to the use, as well as the posts of the surrounding courtyard with their bases, tent pegs and ropes. Again we read they were given carts to carry these. You can read that in Numbers chapter 3 verses 36 to 37. And for Gershom you can read Numbers chapter 3 verses 25 and 26. So all these tasks are mentioned and they were given carts to carry these burdens of the tabernacle. However, the Kohathites, which is the son of Korites from Itchar and Hebron, whose sons are not mentioned, who alone were remainder of the sons of Kohath, as Gershon and Merari's sons' tasks we already saw, were responsible for the care of the sanctuary. And Numbers chapter 3 verses 27, and from Kohath came the clan of the Amorites and the clan of the Itcharites and the clan of the Hebronites and the clan of the Uzelites. These were the clans of the Kohathites, and they were responsible for the care of the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the articles of the sanctuary used in ministering, the curtain and everything related to their use. They were under the direct supervision of Eleazar, son of Aaron. Alright, so you can read this in Numbers chapter 3 verses 30 to 32. And the leader of the fathers' houses of the clans of the Kohathites were Elitzaphan, son of Uzziel, verse 31. And their duty was the ark and the table and the lampstand and the slaughter places and the utensils of the set apart place used in service and the covering and all its service. Verse 32, and Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, was to be chief over the leaders of the Levites with oversight of those who guard the duty of the set apart place. Hence, unlike the Gershonites and the Merarites who were allowed to transport the items under their care on carts, the Korahites, alright, had to carry their items, the holy things of the tabernacle on their shoulders. So they had the arduous burden of transporting these items from place to place as the camp moved, but they were not allowed to actually touch the items or they would die. So the priest had to wrap the sacred objects in special coverings before they were transported. Numbers chapter 4 verses 15, and that is the reason many of the Kohathites began to disdain this task and to covet the role of the priests. Numbers 4 verses 15 says, and when Aaron and his sons have made an end of covering the sanctuary and all the vessels of the sanctuary as the camp is set forward, after that the sons of Kohath shall come to bear it, but they shall not touch any set apart thing lest they die. These things are the burden of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of the congregation. So all those items had to be covered with blue cloths and they were to be carried on the shoulders, and nothing of those sacred items which belong to the set apart place and the most set apart place, all right, were to be touched with bare hands, without the covering, all right, or else the Korites or the Hebronites would be killed or died. So that's the reason they had the fear and they disdained this task. Okay, but Korah didn't understand, and didn't trust Yahuwah, because he had a seed in mind to be part. Yahuwah had his seed to be in part of the singers when the ark would come to the rest, which we see explicitly mentioned in scripture as the calling and election of Elohim is irreversible. So if you read 2 Chronicles 20 verses 19, it says, and the Levites of the children of the Kohathites, of the children of the Korhites, stood up to praise Yahuwah Elohim of Yasharel with exceedingly loud voice. So out of his sons, some would also be gatekeepers. 1 Chronicles 26 verses 1, for the divisions of the gatekeepers of the Korhites, Mashchiyl, Yahu, son of Kore, of the sons of Asaph. All right, gatekeepers were authorized to allow or disallow entry into the temple. All right, so some of his sons were singers and musicians, and some of his sons were gatekeepers. So Korah didn't see what was in store for his seed and wanted to occupy the custodian Levitical priesthood against the Melchizedek priesthood without a positive understanding, and that's exactly what Mashchiyl is. All right. So mysteriously, his sons saw Yahuwah's mercy and they were not killed. And from his descendants, the sons say they heard from our fathers, that is the fathers of belief, and not the immediate father Korah himself, who by unbelief couldn't see or have that positive understanding what was in store for him and for his seed. Numbers chapter 16 verses 33. So they, all right, referring to Korah and the company, and all those with them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. Numbers 26 verses 10, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up together with Korah when that company died, when the fire consumed 250 men, and they became a sign. Verse 11, but the sons of Korah did not die. So here we see Yahuwah's calling and election irreversible. He had mercy on Korah's sons. Right? They were not, the sin of their father was not imputed to them. What a wonderful Yahusha we have, right? Who acted in everything in accordance to his will and his purpose of the calling of his people. So the 13 mashchiyls are translated in English as a contemplation. Now what is a contemplation? A contemplation is an act of considering with attention. All right. So out of the 13 mashchiyls, 3 are of songs of the sons of Korah, which is Psalms 42, 44 and 45. And the fourth one, they sang the maschil of Heman the Ezrahite, which is Psalms 88. So 3 are the songs which they themselves wrote, right? And the fourth one is the song that they sang of Heman the Ezrahite, who was also called into the ministry of musician, right? Which is Psalms chapter 88. And 6 are sung by David himself, 2 by Asaph, and 1 by Ethan the Ezrahite, who is also called as Yedutun. So contemplation is basically a blessing of coming to a state of Yahuwah's promises, either when one is glad or in despair. Okay. So let me give you a few examples of the 13 mashchiyls, all right, that we see in the book of Psalms. Psalms chapter 32. So here David, this is a song, a maschil sung by David. And David begins by saying the state of the righteous in Yahuwah's eyes, and then acknowledges his sin to attain the state of being in the blessedness of forgiveness. All right. So if you read Psalms 32 verses 1 and 2, he talks of the blessedness of he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. And he says, "Blessed is the man to whom Yahuwah imputes no crookedness, and in whose spirit there is no deceit." But when you come to verse 5, he says, "I acknowledge my sin to you, and my iniquity I did not hide. I said, I shall confess my transgressions to Yahuwah, and you forgave the guilt of my sin." Selah. So the blessedness of forgiveness, all right, is seen over here as a promise of that blessing, okay, that is in Yahushua HaMashiach himself, the blessedness of forgiveness. Psalms 42. Okay, here the sons of Korah are singing, "As the deer longs for the water stream, so my being longs for you, O Elohim." All right, so they are talking about the life streams. They are longing for the living waters as a deer, and they compare it to a deer panting for the waters and going in search for waters in a dry and thirsty land. Okay, and they liken it to them going along with their brothers into the temple of Elohim, all right, with the voice of joy and praise. If you read Psalms 42 verses 4, a few verses down, it says, "These I remember and pour out my being within me, for I used to pass along with the throng. I went with them to the house of Elohim with a voice of joy and praise, a multitude celebrating a festival." See that? So that is a desire, a promise to be in the house of Elohim, not in a physical temple, but in Yahushua HaMashiach, which everything rolls over to in a transition. Okay. So Psalms 44. Okay, the sons of Korah are singing what they heard from the fathers of belief, the work Yahuwah did in their days, and their despair was, "You have rejected us and put us to shame, and you did not go out with our armies." So, firstly, they talk about, "Oh Elohim, we have heard with our ears, our fathers have related to us the work you did in their days, in the days of old." All right, and they speak about how Yahuwah drove out the nations, but them, Yasharal, whom he planted, he afflicted peoples and sent them out, but planted his people. All right, and then verse 9, if you come down, it says, "Yet you have rejected us and put to shame, and you do not go out with the armies. You make us turn back from the adversary, and those who hate us have plundered us." Okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's a despair, it's a cry, all right, reminding Yahuwah of his promise, how in the days of old, all right, he planted Yasharal, but now Yahuwah is himself, showing as an adversary to Yasharal, but by giving him over to the armies and who are the enemies of Yasharal, and they are putting them to shame. So that is what the psalm is all about. Psalms 45, again the sons of Korah singing a messianic psalm. Now this is the only maschiyl among the 13 maschiyls which is talking nothing about despair. All right, it's only talking about Yahushua HaMashiach, and this psalm, all right, is quoted in Hebrews chapter 1, where it says, Psalms 45 verses 6 and 7, "Your throne, O Elohim, is forever and ever. The scepter of your reign is a scepter of straightness. You have loved righteousness and hated wrongness. Therefore, Elohim, your Elohim, has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions." And it is quoted in Hebrews chapter 1 verses 8 and 9. So this blessedness of being in Mashiach, all right, is sung by the sons of Korah, and this is a messianic psalm. This is the only psalm which is without any despair. Psalms 52, to the chief musician Mashchiyl, a psalm of David, when Doeg the Edomite came and told Sheol and said to him, "David is come to the house of Achimelech." Now Achimelech was a priest. We know that even Yahusha in the New Testament quotes that David went into the house of Elohim and ate the shewbread and yet was blameless. Okay, so this was the time when Doeg the Edomite came and told King Saul that, "See, I have seen David in the house of Achimelech, all right, eating the bread, the shewbread." And Achimelech, the priest, is killed by King Saul. So This is a despair, cry of despair, which David cries out to Yahuwah, and he says, verse 8 and 9, he says, "But I am like a green olive tree in the house of Elohim. I have trusted in the loving commitment of Elohim forever and ever." Verse 9, "I thank you forever because you have done it, and in the presence of your lovingly committed ones, I wait on your name, for it is good." So he is likening himself as a green olive tree. Remember, green olive tree, Romans chapter 11 talks about the covenant Yasharel as the olive tree. Alright, so David is likening himself as part of the spiritual Yasharel in the house of Elohim in Yahusha HaMashiach. Alright, so it's a causative hearing that we need to hear. While the actual situation, when the causative understanding came, when he was in despair, right? When his adversaries were against him, King Sheol was trying to kill him, right? And Doeg the Edomite went and added fuel to the fire to enhance that to happen, and so he was faced with a Sheol-like situation where death was all around him. But did Yahuwah give him into the hands of King Sheol? No. And he understood this by the causative understanding. Psalms 53. Okay. David in this Mashchiyl is speaking the condition of the depravity of man's heart and grieves, but comforts himself in the Ruach on the turning back of the captivity of his people from the depraved condition. All right. Psalm 53 verses 1 says, "To the chief musician upon Mashchiyl, a psalm of David, the fool has said in his heart, there is no Elohim, corrupt are they, and have done abominable iniquity, there is none that does good." Verse 6, "Oh, that the deliverance of Yasharel would be given out of Zion, when Elohim turns back the captivity of his people. Let Jacob rejoice, let Yasharel be glad." When we read Ephesians chapter 4 verses 10, it talks about Yahushua Mashiach when he ascended on high. He led captivity captive and gave gifts even unto the rebellious. Alright, so we are the rebellious sons, and David in the Ruach understood the causative understanding that when Elohim turns back the captivity of his people, alright, Jacob will rejoice, Yasharel will be glad. So Jacob and Yasharel, alright, what is the difference between them? No difference. Jacob himself was renamed as Yasharel. So if he's saying it twice, it's a causative understanding. Let him, who has ears, let him hear. Right? That's what it means. Psalms chapter 54. Alright, and here David again is fleeing from Sheol, and those who give him place, alright, who are the Ziphims, alright, they gave him a hiding place among themselves, and they themselves went and complained to Sheol that, is David not hiding himself with us? So this is that psalm of a cry. I'll read out Psalms 54 verses 1. "To the chief musician on Neginoth, Mashchiyl, a psalm of David, when the Ziphims came and said to Sheol, does not David hide himself with us? Save me, O Elohim, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength." Right? And then verse 4 he says, "See, Elohim is my helper, and Yahuwah is with those who sustain my life." Alright, so he knows that his sustenance of his life, alright, in the death-like situation is in the causative understanding of the person, alright, who is going to deliver him, that is Yahuwah himself, who has now transitioned as Yahusha, and this is the causative understanding that we have, alright, with us. So he is believed in sustaining of his life. He believed in sustaining of his life even when faced with death-like situation. Psalms 55. Alright, again, "To the chief musician on Neginoth, Mashchiyl, a psalm of David." Alright, he says, "Give ear to my prayer, O Elohim, and hide not yourself from my supplication. Attend unto me and hear me. I moan in my complaint and make noise." And if you come down, he talks about in verse 22, "Cast your burden on Yahuwah and let him sustain you. He never allows the righteous to be shaken." So whom do we cast our burden to? All right. Who cares for us? Cast your burden unto the Adon, for he cares for us. In the new covenant it says, right? So he's Yahusha, Yahuwah who's become Yahusha. So David in his despair cries to Yahuwah in a death-like situation faced by him, and is comforted by the Ruach that Yahuwah will never allow the righteous to be shaken. All right? And that's the reason he transitions and taking all our despair upon himself. Psalms chapter 74. Now, this is a maschil of Asaph. Asaph was the king seer, David's seer, and also he was a seer means prophet, okay? And he was also a chief musician, all right, standing in the office of a chief musician. So, when it says to the chief musician, all right, so he is one of them because there were three chief musicians, Asaph, uh, Heman, all right, and Yadutin or Ethan, all right, the Ezrahite. So these three musicians were in their offices as per the lots that were cast for them to be in office by David. Okay, so here we see in Psalms chapter 74, okay, Asaph is saying, your adversaries have roared in the midst of your appointments. They have set up their own signs as signs. All right. Your adversaries have roared in the midst of your appointments. This word for appointments is muadim, that is feasts. They have set up their own signs as signs. Isn't the situation same like for us today? All right. Asaph in despair is crying out to Elohim why he has cast off his people and why he is angry with them. The adversaries came into his muadim, that is the appointed times, and they have set up their signs as signs. Is it not the same situation today? He comforts himself in the deliverance of Elohim, remembering his works of old, which he did for his people. So, if you read verse 12 to 16, Asaph says, for Elohim is my sovereign from of old, working deliverance in the midst of the earth. You divided the sea by your might, talking about parting the Red Sea. You broke the heads of the sea serpents in the waters. You broke the heads of Leviathan in pieces. You made him food for the people living in the wilderness. All right. You did cleave open the fountain and the flood. You did dry up mighty rivers. Verse 16, the day is yours, the night is yours too. You have established the light and the sun. So, in this cry of despair, when he questions why you have cast us off, all right, he also remembers the works of Elohim, which he did for his people, okay, and reminds Elohim in his despair. Psalm 78, again a maschil of Asaph. Okay, Asaph is drawing attention of the people through his maschil of what the fathers of faith have narrated to them in teaching the Torah to their children, so that the generation to come may place their trust in Elohim and not forget his works and be like the fathers who were rebellious. Right? So he says, a maschil of Asaph, give ear, O my people, to my Torah, incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. So Asaph is drawing attention of the people through his maschil of what the fathers of faith have narrated to them in teaching. Because if you read the verses down, all right, he says, which he commanded our fathers to teach them their children, that it might be known to a generation to come, to children who would be born, to rise up and relate them to their children, and place their trust in Elohim and not forget the works of Elohim, but watch over his commands. So the Torah, the living Torah, the Torah of life, he is saying, needs to be taught to their children and their children's children, so that they don't depart away from the ways of Elohim, and this despair comes upon them of Elohim, chastising them or judging them for their wickedness. So that is what this psalm is about. Psalms 88. Now this is the psalm which the sons of Korah, they sang the maschil of Heman the Ezrahite. Right? So Psalms 88 is a contemplation of Heman, the grandson of prophet Samuel. Right? This is very interesting. His song is sung by the sons of Korah. So if you read over here, 1 Chronicles 6:33, and these are the ones who stood with their sons of the Kohathites were Heman the singer, the son of Yoel, the son of Shemuel. This Shemuel is a prophet Samuel, all right, who after Eli the high priest was chosen, all right, in the days of King Sheol and King David. Okay, and this Heman, okay, talking about Heman, when you read 1 Chronicles 25 verses 5, all these were the sons of Heman, the sovereign's seer. That means he was a prophet in David's court, in the words of Elohim, to exalt his horn. For Elohim gave Heman 14 sons and 3 daughters. Okay, verse 6 of 1 Chronicles 25, all these were at the hands of their father for song in the house of Yahuwah with cymbals, harps, and lyres for the service of the house of Elohim, Asaph, Yedutun, and Heman at the hands of the sovereign. Like I said, Asaph, Yedutun, which is also known as Ethan, and Heman were the chief musicians, and at the hands of the sovereign, alright, they acted as the seers, as the prophets, as well as the chief musicians in his court. Where all the psalms says to the chief musician, when it says it's a repurpose, a psalm written, for example, by sons of Korah, given to the chief musician who would maintain that repository of that psalm, and on a particular feast day or Shabbat day or a worship day, a particular worship day, they would repurpose that psalm by singing that psalm. All right, so the tune, the words, and how they recite it, everything the chief musician would keep a record of. Okay, today we don't have the record of how they sung it, but one thing we definitely know: making melody, singing in your hearts unto the Adon. All right, talking about Yahushua HaMashiach. Hallelujah. Because everything rolls into him, because he is the transition form of Yahuwah, the invisible Yahuwah, and now he's face to face with his creation as Yahusha, right? One and the same. No, it's not Yahuwah in the body of Yahusha, as people say. He is Yahuwah himself, who's in the transition form. So Heman was one of the chief musicians, also David's seer, and called as Heman the singer, appointed to exalt the horn of Elohim. So the chief musician was a custodian of the repository of the Psalms, to repurpose it to be sung in situations, feast days, Shabbats, and other worship days. So the sons of Korah are singing the song of Heman as a repurpose in a time of distress, which Heman himself went through when he was in the sufferings along with David, when David was fleeing his enemies. And this psalm, all right, says, if you read the Psalms, it says, a song or psalm of the sons of Korah to the chief musician upon Makalat Lianoth, maschiyl of the Heman of Ezrahite. So what is Makalat Lianoth? So if you see Makalat, all right, which is Strong's H4257, comes from the root word khal, all right. This is how khal is written, and it is the root word over here. You can see this is the word makal, makalat, and the root word is khal, which means a hole or pain. All right, somebody is going through some intense anguish of the soul, a pain. Okay, khala, which is the feminine form H2470, which means weak, sick, grieved, afflicted, somebody who is afflicted. Hence makala, all right, also means sickness or disease. Remember maklon, all right, in the book of Ruth, all right, maklon means shows us that the son of Elimelech who died at an early age, and he did not have any sons. So this same root word is in maklon, which means somebody who is sick or with a disease. It's not necessarily in the body, it's the anguish of the soul. The soul is diseased. All right, and Lianoth, the Strong's H6031, has the root word ana. All right, And Lianot, see, this is the word Lianot, okay? And if you see the word, these three words, Ana, which is Strong's H6031, means affliction. So hence, La Anut or Li Anot, that means led to affliction. So Anut has the root words Ana, which means afflict, and Mut, which means death. So led to the affliction of the death of Mashchiyl, causative understanding. Remember, Mashchiyl. So hence this Mashchiyl is identifying with the death of Mashchiyl in the distress of being in the sufferings of Sheol. Whatever Haman went through as sufferings cannot be greater than the sufferings of Yahusha. Prophetically, Mashiach is concealed in this suffering. Psalms 89, Mashchiyl of Ethan the Ezrahite, I will sing of the mercies of Yahuwah forever. With my mouth will I make known your faithfulness to all generations. So this psalm is written by Yedutun, and here he is named as Ethan in Psalms 89 verses 1. So if you read 1 Chronicles chapter 15 verses 17, and the Levites appointed Haman son of Yoel and of his brothers, Asaph son of Berechiahu and their brothers, the son of Merari, Ethan son of Cushayahu. So remember I told you three chief musicians were there where we saw in the previous verse. Heman, Asaph and Yedutun. Alright, here he is named as Ethan. So there is no fourth one. It is one and the same, Ethan. Okay, 1 Chronicles 6:44. And their and their brothers, the sons of Merari, on the left hand were Ethan, the son of Kishi, alright, son of Abdi, son of Maluk. So this Cushayahu is named as Kishi over here. Okay, so Ethan was the son of Cushayahu or Kishi. 1 Chronicles 25 verses 3. Of Yedutun, the sons of Yedutun. So now these are the sons of Yedutun. Gedaliahu and Seri and Yashayahu, Khashabyahu and Matityahu, 6. Now if you count over here, you will only find 5, okay? Gedaliahu, Teseri, 2, Yashayahu, 3, Khashabyahu, 4, and Matityahu, 5. But it says here 6. Okay, under the hands of their father Yedutun, who prophesies with the lyre to give thanks and to praise Yahuwah. So the sixth son is actually Obed Edom, okay, which is missing over here, and we don't know why it is not mentioned. His name is not mentioned over here, but elsewhere it is mentioned. If you read 1 Chronicles 16:38, it says also Obed Edom with his 68 brothers, including Obed Edom, son of Yedutun. Can you see here? Obed Edom, son of Yedutun. Here his name is not mentioned. Okay. So Yedutun was a seer and one of the chief musicians appointed by David. Okay, Psalms 39, 62 and Psalm 77 mention him as the chief musician. It says to Yedutun, all right, the chief musician. So if you read 2 Chronicles 35 verses 15, and the singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their places according to the command of David, and Asaph and Heman and Yedutun, the seer of the sovereign, and the gatekeepers at each gate did not have to leave their position because the brothers, the Levites, prepared for them. So the psalm speaks of the promise made to David to establish his seed forever. The Davidic covenant sees its fulfillment as Yahusha, who sits on the throne as Lion of Yehuda forever. Psalms 89 verses 3, you said, I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to my servant David, I establish your seed forever and shall build up your throne to all generations. Selah. Remember, Selah means ponder. It's one and the same thing as seeing to have a causative understanding by pausing. You need to pause, go back, read again, understand. He who has ears, let him understand. So that's what it means. So this covenant that was made with David is the covenant of Yahushua Mashiach, the Lion of Yehuda, sitting as king or sovereign forever and ever. Okay, Psalms 89:27. I also appoint him firstborn. So see how the language switches. Who's the firstborn? Yahushua Mashiach, the first fruits, firstborn over all creation, highest of the sovereigns of the earth. I guard my loving commitment for him forever, and my covenant is steadfast with him. So this is a prophetic voice speaking about David's throne, which will be established forever and fulfilled and transitioning in Yahushua HaMashiach. Psalms 142, a maschil of David, a prayer when he was in the cave. I cried unto Yahuwah with my voice, and with my voice unto Yahuwah did I make my supplication. I pour out my complaint before him. I declare before him my distress. So the maschil of David was a cry of distress when he was hiding from King Sheol in the cave, placing his trust in Yahuwah as his refuge. And he says in verse 5 of Psalms 142, I cried out to you, O Yahuwah. I said, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. All right. So, we can see over here, even when he faced the death-like situation, he had a causative understanding of who his refuge is. Okay. For he foresaw the covenant that Yahuwah made with him, that his throne will be established forever. So he saw a sustenance of life, all right, in him, being in a causative fulfillment of that promise that was made to him, where Mashiach would come forth from him. Hallelujah. Number 13 maschils. So people consider number 13 as an omen or an evil number, but number 13 in scripture actually shows a blessing of a promise. So I'll give you an example. Okay, when you read Genesis chapter 15, all right, here Abraham tells Yahuwah, saying, verses 2, and Abraham said, Master Yahuwah, what would you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus? Okay, and what does Yahuwah tell him in verse 4? And see, the word of Yahuwah came to him, saying, this one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir. All right, and Yahuwah made a promise to Abraham over here that Eliezer of Damascus is not his heir, but the one that would come from his own body would be his heir. Sarah, on the other hand, tried to generate the promise by asking Abraham to take Hagar, her, servant, as wife, and Ishmael was born, who was not the heir, as he was the son of the bond servant. Let's see, these are the words of Sarai. She says, Genesis 16:2, and Sarai said to Abraham, see, Yahuwah has kept me from bearing children. Please go in to my female servant. It might be that I am built up by her. And Abraham listened to the voice of Sarah. Whereas in chapter 15, the promise was already given that this one is not your heir, but the one who comes from your own body. So Sarah tried to generate the promise, all right, that probably since I'm childless, go in and take Hagar to be your wife, and probably, I will be built up by her. Okay, and verse 15 and 16, all right, of Genesis 16 says, and Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son whom Hagar bore Ishmael. Verse 16, and Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abraham. So how old was Abraham? 86 years old. Okay, and when we read Genesis 17 verses 25, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Abraham and his son Ishmael was circumcised the same day. All right, so when you read Genesis chapter 17, Yahuwah visits Abraham with a promise that now is the time for fulfillment, and he gives him a sign of righteousness in his body that he has to go through circumcision. And at that time, Abraham was 99 years old. You can read Genesis chapter 17 verses 1. Abraham was 99 years old. When was Ishmael born to him? When he was 86 years old. So 99 minus 86 is 13. And that's how we see here Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. So 13 years later, which is 86 plus 13, 99, Yahuwah revisited him when he was 99 years old and gave him the sign of righteousness in the flesh, that is circumcision. And the same year, Sarah conceived. So Ishmael was 13 years old, of whom it was said that Yahuwah will also make a great nation from him. So the uh, so we see over here that number 13, all right, is not evil, but in fact it came towards the final stages of the fulfillment, because in that same year when he was 99 years old, after he was circumcised, Sarah conceived, and when Abraham was 100 years old, Ishak was born, the promised seed. So beautiful if you understand how numbers mean in scripture. The destruction of Jericho is stamped with the number 13, for the city was marched around for 6 straight days. So Yasharel for 6 days took one round each. Alright, numbers, so 6. And on the 7th day, they marched 7 times around the city. So 7 plus 6 is 13. And the whole walls came crumbling down. Alright, great victory for Yasharel. Okay, now what is interesting is 12 or 13 tribes. Now you will say, hold on, what are you talking about? So if you read Ezekiel chapter 48, it records 13 tribes. Number 1, Dan, Ezekiel 48:1. Number 2, Asher, Ezekiel 48:2. You can read these scriptures for yourself. Number 3, Naphtali, Ezekiel 48 verses 3. Manasseh, Ezekiel 48 verses 4. Ephraim, Ezekiel chapter 48 verses 5. Reuben, number 6, Ezekiel 48 verses 6. Number 7, Yehuda, Ezekiel 48 verses 7. Number 8, Levites, Ezekiel chapter 48 verses 10 to 11 and verse 22. 9, Binyamin, that is Benjamin, Ezekiel 48 verses 23. 10, Shimon, Ezekiel 48 verses 24. 11, Issachar, Ezekiel chapter 48 verses 25. 12, Zebulun, Ezekiel 48 verses 26. And 13, Gad, Ezekiel chapter 48 verses 27. So we see in Ezekiel, Joseph or Yahusap, as we say Joseph, both sons Ephraim and Manasseh are mentioned in the lineage, okay, as the 12 tribes, because it was promised to him that he would receive a double portion. So if you see over here, Manasseh and Ephraim both are mentioned over here. Okay, but when you come to Revelation chapter 7, which we'll see a little later, all right, his name Joseph and Manasseh is listed. So which is one and the same, as Yahuwah maintains his promise of a lot of a double portion. So it says Joseph and it says Manasseh. So Ephraim is counted in Joseph. Okay. So we see 12 and 13 tribes, both are being correct, because Old Testament included Dan with his other 11 brothers, and in Revelation chapter 7 verses 4 to 8, Dan is excluded because this branch was broken off. So if you read Genesis 49 verses 16 to 18, it says Dan rules his people as one of the tribes of Yasharel. Verse 17, Dan is the serpent by the way and adder by the path that bites the horse's heels so that its rider falls backward. Verse 18, I have waited for your deliverance, O Yahuwah. So Dan's blessing was not a blessing actually in Genesis chapter 49, but a prophecy of him being cut off because he would cause the fall of many in Yasharel. Remember, Jeroboam placed one golden calf in Bethel and the other one in Dan. Okay, so that's the reason Dan was completely cut off as a tribe. We see the same thing where 12 or 13 apostles of the Lamb. So you'll say, what are you talking about? We remember when Judas Iscariot, all right, hung himself and he was dead. So there were 11 apostles, okay. And in I think Acts 1:26, yes, they drew lots. The apostles, they drew lots for them, and the lot fell on Matithyahu, as they say Matthias, and he was added to the 11 apostles, making it 12. But there was one apostle born out of due time, that is Sheol, all right, where Sheol himself says in Galatians 1 verses 1, Sheol, an emissary, not from men, nor by man, but by Yahusha Mashiach and Elohim the Father who raised him from the dead. Okay, Ephesians 1 verses 1, Sheol, an emissary of Yahusha Messiah by the desire of Elohim to the set apart ones who are in Ephesus and true to Messiah Yahusha. So Sheol, an emissary or apostle, not by man, not by men or man, but by Yahusha Messiah and by the desire of Elohim. So wasn't Sheol indicating what was concealed in the 11 or 12 or 13 tribes comparing to Yahuwah's choosing of the apostles. Alright, so the 12th one was Matthias, chosen by men. Alright, that's the reason he says, not from men nor by man, but by Yahusha, Mashiach and Elohim the Father who raised him from the dead. So he's talking about his apostleship, chosen by Yahusha Mashiach himself as one born out of due time. Okay, so hence we see the maschiyl at work here, as Dan was dropped and double portion was given to Joseph, where it talks about the 12 and 13 tribes. Okay, we see the same among choosing of the apostles. Matityahu or Matthias was chosen by other apostles by casting lots, making the count from 11 to 12, but Yahusha had his chosen one born out of due time, that is Sheol, right, the 13th apostle, who is actually of the 12. Okay, and that's where we can read Galatians 2 verses 8, for Sheol says, for he who worked in Kepha, alright, to make him an emissary to the circumcised, also worked in me for the lost sheep of the house of Yasharel, the Guim. Alright. Okay, the another example we will see of the 13, alright, number 13. Haman intends to kill the Yahudim, and what he purposes comes back to him. So if you read over here in the book of Esther, chapter 3 verses 7, in the first new moon, which is the new moon of Nisan, in the 12th year of sovereign Akash Verosh, someone cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day and from new moon to new moon until it fell on the 12th month. Okay, so from day to day they cast from one new moon to another until they completed 12 months. Okay, which is the new moon of Adar. And if you see over here, if you come down verses 12, it says, and the sovereign scribes were called on the 13th day of the first new moon, and a decree was written according to all that Haman commanded. And what was the decree? That all Jews, all right, should be killed. So he took the signet of the king, influenced the king against the Jews that they be killed. Right, and with the signet he sends a decree on the 13th day, and this all came against him because of the intervention of Queen Esther. All right, she caused the punishment to be reversed on Haman instead of Mordecai. So if you read Esther chapter 7 verses 9, and it talks about the eunuchs. One of the eunuchs said to the sovereign, all right, at the table, what happens is Queen Esther is there, the king is there, and Haman is invited as a guest, and the queen talks to the king, about herself and her people, all right, under the threat of being killed, all right, and so the king is ferocious, and he says that who is that fellow, who's trying to kill you and your people, and she says he is Haman, all right, who has raised his hand to kill me and my people, because if they are killed, even I will be killed. The king gets ferocious, and then one of the eunuchs comes and says to the sovereign, also see the wooden structure 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on behalf of the sovereign, is standing at the house of Haman. And the sovereign said, impale him on it. And they hanged Haman on the wooden structure that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the sovereign's wrath abated. So Mordecai was pleading with Queen Esther, spare my life, but he was worthy of death because he wanted to kill all the Yahudim. Okay, so speaking of the depravity and carnality of man, all right, when we read Romans, all right, this is the place where we will find the word Mashchiyl, all right. Sheol shows the condition that there is none that understands, all right, Elohim or Elohim. Romans chapter 3 verses 10, as it is written, there is none righteous, not even one. Verse 11, there is none that understands. The word understands there is maschiyl, all right, nor that seeks after Elohim. Verse 12, they all have turned aside together, they have become worthless. There is none who does good, there is not even one. So, speaking of the depravity and carnality of man, Sheol the emissary shows the condition that there is none that understands. Remember, maschiyl is a hippil word stem and is a causative understanding, which means unless Elohim does not open the hearing, what is spoken of will never be understood, and man will be in his carnal state, in a depraved state, not understanding or seeking Elohim at all. So the cries of despair when he's facing Sheol like situation all rolls up to Yahushua HaMashiach, all right, as there is no suffering under the sun that man has borne or can bear match up with the suffering of Mashiach, as he is the only one who overcame Sheol and is alive forevermore and holds the keys of Sheol and of death. Okay. Sheol talks in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verses 13, no trial has overtaken you except such as is common to man, and Elohim is trustworthy, who shall not allow you to be tried beyond what you are able, but with the trial shall also make the way of escape, enabling you to bear it. So speaking of now speaking of the edification of the set apart ones in the Corinthian assembly, see what Sheol wrote. Okay, 1 Corinthians 14:19. Indeed, in the assembly, I choose to speak 5 words in my understanding. Now, the Hebrew word there is sakal, which is a root word in Mashchiyl. All right, we saw that, right? Sakal means to understand, instruct, teach. Right, in order to instruct others also to speak 10,000 words in a tongue. So again, I'll read this verse. Indeed, in the assembly, I choose to speak 5 words in my understanding in order to instruct others also to speak 10,000 of, then to speak in 10,000 words in a tongue. Okay, so speaking of the edification to the set apart ones in the assembly, Sheol says he chooses to speak 5 words in his understanding in order to instruct others rather than 10,000 words in a language. So number 5 speaks of Torah and of the 10 words, all right, where 5 words were related to the neighbor, summed as love your neighbor as yourself, and 5 words are related to love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength and might. And it is transitioned into Yahushua Mashiach in these 2 royal commandments, because Yahushua says, unless you love me more than your father, mother, brother and sister, you are not worthy to be my disciple. Alright, so bringing a causative understanding to the mystery of Mashiach concealed in scriptures is displaying the royal commandment of love your neighbor as yourself. So the 10 commandments or 10 words, alright, which is mentioned in Exodus chapter 34 verses 28, where it says, so he was there with Yehuda 40 days and 40 nights. He did not eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 words. Right? So the 10 commandments are termed as 10 words, and 5 words are related to and transition to loving Yahusha more than the father, mother, brother, sister, etc. And the other 5 words are related to and transition to loving your neighbor as yourself. Hence, what Sheol spoke is related to the 5 commands or 5 words out of the 10 words relating to the revelation of Yahusha, which are the first 5 commands. And in the second 5 words, that is love your neighbor as yourself, he rather in the assembly speak of 5 words with understanding to edification rather than speak in 10,000 words in an unknown language. He brings an order of, if any such thing happens, there has to be one who interprets. Hence he breaks it to 5 words, as it's of the first, all right, 5 to the second 5 summed as 2 royal laws. So the revelation of Yahushua Mashiach of the first 5 commandments, all right, he rather bring that revelation, all right, in love, all right, because 1 Corinthians 13 he talks about love is above everything, all right, and love, out of that love, you will bring the exposition and edification to your neighbor. Hence you are also fulfilling the commandment, love your neighbor as yourself, because you are saving him from Sheol, from the second death, by bringing that exposition. That's what it means. So beautiful if you understand, the 5 words. Why he says 5 words and not 10 words? Because the 5 words is of the first 5 commandments, the revelation of who Yahuwah is, being transitioned to Yahusha or morphed to Yahusha, all right, bringing that exposition to and edification to the set apart ones by fulfilling the royal law, love your neighbor as yourself. All right? Hence he says 5. Number 5 talks about Torah. You may read the entire study here. I'll place the note. All right. So finally, out of the 13 mashchiyls, 12 are cries of despair, whereas Psalms 45 is the only psalm is of joy of identifying, yourself or myself with Yahusha Mashiach, and is quoted in Hebrews chapter 1. All right. So 12, the 13 of the 12, all right, we see that picture everywhere. All right, if you understand the number 13, it's a number of promise, of berekah, of blessing, where one transitions into Yahusha HaMashiach and identifies himself by that causative understanding. All right, causative, the hifil stem, verb stem, the causative understanding. You know, as in Psalms it says that you have opened my hearing, and Hebrews it says a body you have prepared for me. So the causative understanding will immediately understand that the hearing of Yahushua Mashiach is opened up to us, the seals are opened up to us, and now we understand who he is, and we bring that exposition of by love for our brethren, all right, by fulfilling the royal law, love your neighbor as yourself. All right. So that is the beautiful aspect of the 13 maschiyls that we see, all right, in the book of Psalms. Hallelujah. May Yahusha Barak you.